Woo. All right, welcome to another meeting, everyone. Hello. So RFC triage, I don't think we have any new RFCs, but if anyone's interested, I think we're getting pretty close to entering FCP on the inheritance RFC. So please, if you care about how inheritance works in like WASM BindGen and the web sys crate that we're building, go take a look at that and drop your thoughts in the issue. And let's move on to 2018 triage. So there's a link to all of our issues open here. And this should represent everything we want to land for 2018. And hello. And specifically, I think it'd be good to focus on the 2018 Preview 2, which is shipping August 2nd, so that is a week from today. So right now we have the publishing the JS sys crate issue is the top on my list at least, and I'm gonna do that today. I haven't looked if anyone has commented with any final concerns, but all the things are checked in there. Is there anything new here? Okay, so I'll probably publish that after this meeting. And then is there anything else here for Preview 2 that has not landed yet?
Did we tag anything? No, that looks like the only thing that's been tagged is Preview 2.
Okay.
Nick, I don't know if now is the right time to talk about the stuff that not quite for Preview 2, but we intend to land for end of week for WASM Pack next week. It's like Preview 2 late edition.
This is the 060 stuff that we talked about?
The 050 stuff.
The 050? Yeah, why don't you talk about that now?
Sure. So Alex, Nick, and I just had a meeting right before this and had one a little bit yesterday too, to talk primarily about the overall user experience and workflow of WASM Pack. And so one of the things that kind of came up that I think is interesting, I don't think we actually settled on whether or not something would be deprecated or not, but we're definitely kind of like full steam ahead on plugging everything into WASM Pack. And so one of our major goals is the idea that we don't want to make any user cargo install more than one thing. Because cargo install is already kind of like a poopy experience. It's not really meant to be distributing things. There's no way to update stuff. And so having to cargo install more than one thing is not so great. And so we talked about coordinating WASM BindGen versions. We also talked about installing WASM BindGen CLI as a binary, not in cargo install, to significantly reduce the time. And so there has been a PR open on WASM Pack that's extremely close to getting us in this kind of direction that we have been pumping the brakes on, but we are going to move full steam ahead with. And what was the other stuff? Oh, the other thing that we decided was that right now the PKG directory that WASM Pack generates is this kind of horrible mishmash of generated files and files that maybe the user goes in and like puts in there. And so that poses a whole bunch of problems, including like what happens if you run WASM Pack again and somebody has edited something in there? Or like, should we really be committing this stuff to version control if it's generated? And so what we've decided is that for anything that we anticipate that the user would want to add, we want to add a step to WASM Pack that will, like say you want to put an image in your README or something, there'll be a directory at the top level of your Rust crate, and a step in WASM Pack will be to copy that stuff over. It will require a little bit of documentation, but the goal here is that the package directory is never touched. It is just constantly generated for you. And partially because of this, we also talked about there's been kind of a longstanding issue of whether or not we should separate WASM Pack init, which is currently doing everything, into init and build. And what we realized is that splitting it doesn't actually make sense. And really what we need to do is just rename it to what it is, which is WasmPack build. And for anything that might have been handled in an init step, we'd actually like to kind of not shell out, but like move responsibility of that over to the template that we're building, so that the steps you really have are cargo generate template, and then WasmPack build. And WasmPack build will do all of the things. So as far as deprecating init and moving over to build, I have a couple ideas technically on how to do that. But those are the primary things that we want to do. The awesome thing about this is almost all of the code exists in PRs already. We have a few more kind of steps to get it all the way there, but we're going to aim for the end of next week to land that. And just like looking forward, 0.6.0, we're going to move the WASM opt, WASM snipped, and TOML configuration stuff to the release after this user experience one, partially because we've been pumping our brakes on those things because they haven't felt like they have a great place to land. And I think with the improvements that we've come up with for 0.5, it will make a lot more sense to land those things because everything will be in a sure spot. So that's that update. Please fill in if I missed anything.
Yeah, that sounds super awesome. Does anyone have thoughts on that? Okay.
So I think the wasm bindgen dependency thing is a PR on my end. I can definitely get that done by end of the week or whenever that needs to get done. But yeah, feel free to follow up.
Cool. Yeah, I have a summary that I owe you on that issue with all the shenanigans we just came up with, but that sounds great.
Awesome. Sounds good.
What is that sound?
Sorry.
Is that you? Okay.
That creaky noise was my coworker coming in asking me stuff. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
That was the door.
Okay. So going over some more of these issues here. Nothing is jumping out at me. Is there any of the blocking Rust 2018 issues that anyone wants to talk about in particular?
So I was gone for like 2 weeks, obviously. So it looks like the book stuff is there's 3 of them. When do we need those by? I know it's going to be at least by launch, but like, do we want to have them out in like preview 2, preview 3?
Yeah.
I guess what's the schedule for it?
I'd say the sooner the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Sooner the better, but like, I don't know. So like issue 14, the integrate WasmPack workflow into, oh wait, sorry, wrong one.
That's right. That's issue 14.
Yeah, sorry, but that's for the template. Sorry, issue 26, integrating WasmPack into Game of Life.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I feel like we kind of want the like WasmPack build command to be there before we do it, or else we're going to end up like integrating it twice, right? Because the workflow is going to change a little bit, and we're going to have to do it again.
But yeah, that sounds good. And then you had just put in the PR for putting the Game of Life as the default tutorial, so that's 44.
Yeah. Did that merge? I haven't read my emails yet.
I have not merged it. I said I would take a look at it, but I did see that you had put it in. So I guess I could put like a tag saying there's a PR open for it.
So one thing I can say about like the wanting WasmPack build to be there. So I know for the Game of Life tutorial, I think we might want like the WASM opt and WASM snipped and configuration stuff there. But my plan for the command is like, we're literally just renaming init to build. So I'm just going to leave them aliased for a while. So even if the tutorial said WasmPack init, like you could just, it will be a 1-word like fix. But if you had it say WasmPack init right now, it would be fine and not like require a huge amount of work unless unless what you want to wait for is like all of the configuration shenanigans, and that would make sense. But as far as like the interface, like I think init and build, for at least for the next 2 or 3, will be the same as people catch up.
Yeah.
And I'll just print a deprecation warning on init for a couple of releases.
Okay.
And I think it's fine not to have the configuration and the snipping and the opt and stuff, because like that stuff doesn't even really factor in until later in the tutorial. And then it's mostly like about, here's the configuration you set in Cargo Toml to make sure you're doing this kind of build.
Right.
Okay, then I think we could. Then I think that there is actually not a blocker
Okay.
for integrating WebAssembly into the Game of Life tutorial. I thought we were blocking on the configuration, but if we're not, like especially because init and build are basically just going to get aliased, the same thing.
Okay.
Okay.
That's great.
I think that's doable then, and then we can just make 45, which is the publishing. Just kind of take what currently exists in the WasmPack tutorial with the scoping and stuff like that, and then just kind of shift it over and make a Game of Life focused. So that's actually doable.
Totally.
I think most of those issues we can knock out relatively soon then.
So one question I did have about the books stuff, and I've talked about this with Nick briefly. What do we think about the WasmPack tutorial? Like, so our book is really like 2 books. It's like the Game of Life thing, and then WasmPack Hello World kind of like stuck at the end. I would really love to see that tutorial that's stuck on the end get put into the WasmPack repo, and then have our book just really be focused on using the Game of Life example to like go through all of our tools. Like it's like the integration book, and like the WasmPack tutorial is like the unit book. If this is making any sense.
No, that makes sense. So maybe what we can do is have so we can have the book, and then we can have like an appendix and say like, here's other more focused, like tutorials and books on specific tooling if you want to take more of a look into it. But like,
yeah, and I would link to the WasmBindGen guide there too. I felt so goofy, but if anyone on this call doesn't know that the WasmBindGen guide exists, 1, it's amazing. 2, it exists. 3, go read it. We need to link to it from like way more places.
Well, like what was that? The SERD thing that we found the other day?
Oh, SERD?
Yeah, so SERD. So it was buried in the documentation for the guide, but it was like, oh, if you turn on this feature, you now have SERD, and you can like deserialize values inside of your WasmBindGen, which is like from JS values, which was dope. But like
I ended up linking to WasmBindGen documentation in the changelog for WasmPack. So
it was good. It's good stuff.
I have a fairly stupid question, so I need to apologize in advance. I'm just now starting working on the chapter of my WebAssembly book that is far enough along in JavaScript integration to use WasmPack, and so I'm hearing some things about it maybe changing, or is there a reason why I should hold off on doing that?
Oh, no. So the only thing that is officially changing is when WasmPack was originally conceived, the idea was kind of just to like prep your thing for publishing. But it turns out we threw it into the wild and everyone was like, this is a build tool. And I've just been using it as a build tool ever since, which is totally fine. The only change that you will see that would be quote unquote breaking is that instead of typing WasmPack init, you can type WasmPack build. But I'm going to preserve the command as an alias for a long time. But really the only change that you would potentially see is a renaming of the command to be a little bit more honest about the fact that it's doing a ton of building. But other than that, like we're not seeing any interface changes. The primary thing is we'll be adding just a lot more features and things that you can configure. But the just WasmPack init experience and what you do there, that workflow isn't going to change at all.
So I guess the follow-up question is, are there any samples that you think might be really compelling to show off more than just the JavaScript integration, but in addition, some of the stuff that WasmPack does? And obviously I don't want to put a Game of Life sample in a published book.
So So you're saying you would want to have an example of something that you would publish to NPM using WasmPack that shows off WASM's features and why it's a cool thing? Just restating it to make sure I understand.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if you had already thought of some other samples that you might be playing around with that might make for good illustrations of that functionality.
Yeah, totally. So one of the fascinating things that this working group has kind of like bumped into is the need for really good examples for why would you want to write something in Rust and compile them to WebAssembly. And that's because it turns out that the things that WebAssembly is good at is complicated things and things that take a really long time. And so in trying to teach people workflows, also teaching them how to write one of those complicated things in Rust it's just really two jobs, right? And so we kind of settled on the game of life because that's also like a nice hello world exercise for a language. But I know that some of the things that people are working on, and if I were to sit down and write an example that I think would be incredibly compelling, I'd probably write a parser. Like a big file or like a markdown parser or something.
That sounds like a good project. I'm running into the same issue. So my book is programming WebAssembly with Rust, and I'm struggling with how do I find something complicated enough to make it seem like, oh yeah, I should write a WebAssembly module for this, and not so complicated that people new to Rust are going to just crap themselves when they see this chapter.
I think what's really what are good examples, like a shape of thing that is a class of good examples, is when you have a parser, but then you aren't like giving the whole parsed AST back to JavaScript or something. Like instead you provide kind of like an interface for querying like whatever you parsed and however you got the data. Because that way you don't have to transfer ownership of the huge data structure that you parsed back to JavaScript, and you don't have to like allocate JavaScript objects and everything, right? And
right. So if it was a language translator, you would get back the translated language, not the graph of the intermediate stuff that nobody cares about.
Yeah, or like, I don't know if you saw the oxidizing source maps article on hacks.mozilla a while back. But like it parses these source maps which contain like like mappings from some minified JavaScript line to a unminified JavaScript line, right? It's like debug info, and then rather than returning the whole map of like all the different line numbers to line numbers, what you do is you say, oh, I have this line number, tell me what the corresponding line number is. And so like the data that's actually crossing the boundary at any given time is really small, and like all of the like parsed and processed data lives in WASM.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yep. All right, so jumping back to the Game of Life tutorial and WasmPack stuff, do you want to own this, Gatozi, or I can do it if you don't have time, or if anyone else wants to step up?
So I'm going to be a tad busy finishing up my async class for RustConf in the next few weeks. I might be able to do it. At the very least, I can look at PRs. I will kind of give you judgment by like next week if I can definitely take it. But if someone wants to champion it now, then I'm willing to do that. Otherwise, I'll just spend a weekend and then just push it out.
Well, what I was going to say is literally the Game of Life tutorial plus WasmPack is going to be a lot of the work that Steve and I do for our WASM tutorial. So it needs to get done by RustConf. Okay. I will certainly do it before RustConf if it doesn't get done.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I guess we have a lot of stuff for RustConf, so let's make that the target before then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Why don't we just do it like this? Like if anyone is ready to start working on it, like comment so that we don't have people duplicating work. And then just whoever comments first, take it.
it's the first time someone's commented first on something, not immediately hated it afterwards.
All right.
As for moving the Hello World WasmPack tutorial out of the book repo and into the WasmPack repo, I actually already have a branch locally that's like does it. So once I land that, I'll probably land it in for the 0.5 release, and then I'll just go clean up in the book.
All right,
So
I can coordinate on that one.
I actually already opened a PR removing it from the book as part of making the Game of Life tutorial the main thing.
All right, well, we should not land that until I don't want it to like disappear, from the internet. So,
Okay.
Did you merge it or no?
No.
Not yet. We can hold off until WasmPack 05.
Okay.
When are we planning on releasing 05? Next week?
Friday next week at the latest. Might be earlier. Depends on
Okay.
how stuff goes.
Okay, so Nick will probably hold off on your PR to be merged until then.
Yeah.
But then we can just, if it's all good by that time, we can just simultaneously just do both.
Yep. I think also like, I don't know, we could also land the WasmPack guide before 050 if you think it's in place.
I'll just try and see if I can get that done, and it should be fine.
Cool.
Okay. The other question I had was there were people working on making the Game of Life tutorial use the template. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
not
Alice, they haven't done it yet. Alice, she just kind of had like a rough few weeks, so she hasn't had as much time to do it. So I'm working with her on that, trying to get her to put it in. So hopefully soon.
So one thing on that, Gatozy, like that's like a pretty big thing that we're feeling a little blocked on. Is there a chance that she could push up like a work in progress, or like is there a way we can make the task smaller so that she can feel successful, and that also we are not like, it's kind of like our critical documentation with a critical feature that we've been waiting on for like a month now. So it's just kind of like a bad situation that like we need to get it done.
That was kind of what I was thinking we were at. So yeah, I'll talk with her, see if we can push up a work in progress. Maybe like, I think she has at least something for chapter 0. So that way we can then utilize that and then just kind of move it to the other ones, because it's like multiple branches. So like just kind of take that commit and then change whatever needs to be changed for each chapter. So there's still like a start of that.
Yeah, the other thing to mention, Nick, I don't know if you want to talk about the let's not maintain 1,000 branches for the tutorial.
Yeah, I was gonna ask people's opinions. Is that like updating the code, the WASM Game of Life repo kind of sucks, because it's like this weird system where there's submodules of itself in the master branch for each like chapter 0, chapter 1, etc.
Yeah.
And updating that is kind of a pain. It was like the best thing I could think of for keeping everything in one repo and having incremental, steps and everything. But like, it also means that like we can't use Dependabot to keep WASM BindGen up to date, which, is the thing that we're updating most often. And so the idea was like, what if we just only have the finished product there? And we don't have like chapter 0 and chapter 1, et cetera, and we just have the final thing.
Or we turn it to a cargo workspace.
What was that?
We turn it to a cargo workspace. So each chapter is its own binary and stuff, but it's workspaced out. So you could still have it be its own individual binary stuff.
So coming from a teacher's perspective, I've spent forever trying to also maintain these like individual step things. I just think that at the current moment, our curriculum is churning too much to want to keep doing this. And the awesome thing about Git is I think we should keep it to one for now. And then once we've found like a solid place where we think it's going to stay, then we have not prevented ourselves from going back and creating those different areas.
Okay.
But like what we have done functionally right now is for a very small amount of reward, increase the barrier to entry for making any updates to our book. And we are paying dearly for that in out-of-date documentation.
Okay, so let's make the action plan then. Get rid of the other branches, and then have it be the final product, but it uses the template as part of it. Is that kind of what we want to do then?
Essentially, yeah. I kind of think the template is a bit of an orthogonal issue. Like I think we just want to maintain one master branch that is the final product of the Game of Life tutorial. And then whether the Game of Life tutorial has been, edited to work on top of the template or not is a separate issue from that.
Okay, so I think we can then just, it shouldn't be too hard to make a PR to just change it to just the one branch, and then update the book to show that, and then just kind of coordinate the two being merged at the same time. I think that's fairly easy.
Yep.
I can probably do that. And then I can let Alice focus on a smaller chunk to just update the one final version to just have that, which I think would help her out a bit. So that way we can get that done sooner.
Yeah. And then the corresponding bit is like, we also need to update like the book text to say use cargo generate and then blah, 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 rather than like check out this random branch of this repo.
Stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if it would also benefit cargo generate to have some examples of people using it, because hilariously, the large popular opinion of cargo generate right now is that no one thinks it's useful at all. Thanks, Reddit. But yeah, if we could get that in there, it would definitely help explain what the purpose of that stuff is. So
Yeah.
assuming we can separate that out, if adding using cargo generate in the template is something like I've been wanting to write a blog post or an example, so I would maybe even take that on, because the lack of an example or something like that is actually causing me trouble in developing cargo generate. So.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we had an issue for the book for that, but maybe we only had it for the template.
Cargo generate landed pretty recently, so it's possible that didn't get, like that was like implicitly understood under template.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else specific about 2018 that we want to dig into, or should we move on to just general goal updates?
Well, there's one thing which I'm actually going to call on Sendil for. Do you want to talk about the website?
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh, you're muted again.
I didn't get the question.
Oh, I said, do you want to share some of the stuff that you've been doing on the website?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I initially started with some design, but that was like, I was not so sure. And then I updated the design. I think I shared the design with Ashley and Nick, probably, and I've just raised a pull request for that. The content might be changing. Something we can add the content or make it more crisp. But apart from that, I think the design, for me, it looks good. But if you guys want to change it, or if there is something that has to be updated, we can update it there. But you can go ahead. Okay. I'll share that screenshot. I don't know where to share that screenshot, probably. So I just shared with Nick. But for others, if you guys want to have that screenshot, probably ping me in Discord. I'll just update you with the screenshot.
Yeah, so the one thing I was going to say is, so what it currently does is it kind of does the sales pitch of like why WASM at all. And then it kind of showcases our tools. And one of the other things that the working groups are doing that I think is a really powerful thing that you can add to the site is like real life examples like this in the world. And so I know we have the source maps thing, but there's been like random content, like I've seen on Twitter, people being like, I think Fastly's, well, I don't know if Fastly's using Rust generated WebAssembly or not. Anyways, it would be really great if we could, maybe we should file an issue on the Rust WebAssembly team repo, but collecting like real world examples of people doing this is kind of like a content hole that we have right now on the web page.
Yeah, I think like there is one thing from Dropbox. They were like doing events for this with WebAssembly, with Rust and all those stuff. But I'm not particularly sure whether we have to focus something that uses WASM bindgen tooling and things like that, or we have to just focus on Rust and WebAssembly, just that stuff.
Yeah, I think focusing just on Rust and WebAssembly is fine. Like the target of the website is not engineers, it's CTOs. And so the CTO is not going to go, is this specific tooling getting used here? What they want to know is tools exist, docs exist, and people in the real world actually use this.
Okay.
So if it's not completely aligned under the hood, I think that's okay.
Okay, but apart from that, adding some examples from company like Dropbox or someone else, do we have to ask them whether we okay with adding that stuff, or we can just go ahead and put it inside?
We should get it, and then we should talk to them and make sure.
Okay.
If it's public, it's usually not an issue, but I know at least in the core team, we're like pretty in contact with folks who are using stuff like Rust in production, and we know the people to ping.
Okay, sure.
I can take care of the consent issues as long as we get the content on there. But it's good to think about that. You're not wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Should we dive into goal status updates?
Sounds good to me.
All right. All right, the WebIDL based syscrate, WebSys. I should probably just rename this in here. It is going pretty well. There's been some work or some incoming work on namespaces so we can support like the console. And then I believe we had to disable some functionality that ended up triggering like multiple constructors or something and caused some breakage. I have been a little bit less on top of that, but I guess the other thing is that like kind of the partner of the web syscrate is the JS syscrate, which we mentioned we're shipping today. Do you have anything you want to add about this, Alex, with WebSys?
No, I think it's actually steadily progressing. Like we got, I think, like HTML document APIs going on there recently, but otherwise, I don't think there's much known as blockers. And I mean, just we could probably maybe use a renewed call to action to kind of see what's going on there. And I think like the namespaces and iterables aren't blocking too much, and so it might be ripe at this point to kind of have another community jolt to try and push people towards it again.
Okay. So I was gonna, I don't know if anyone saw, but I wrote up a little blog post announcing the JSSys release, and I can put a little call to action for WebSys in there as well. All right. Ashley, do you have any more WASM-Pack updates?
I feel like I gave a really comprehensive WASM-Pack update.
Yeah.
What?
I'm not talking to you.
Sorry. I thought you were.
I'm so sorry. It's fine. People in my household are thinking I'm speaking to them. No, so I think what I kind of set up, I mean, I guess I can share a little bit about the long-term version of WASM-Pack. So again, UX improvements for 5, and we want to land 5 at the end of next week. Then 6 is all the tooling and configuration support. And the goal for that is mid August. So especially because a lot of the PRs are already there, it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround from 5 to 6. And then currently on the roadmap, and we'll see how this actually goes, but Alex has been working on some really interesting testing stuff, and maybe putting like a naive version of that as like a version of WASMPack test to try and have people play around with is something that I think we're looking at for 7. One thing that I have just not touched at all yet, and fascinatingly has not super come up, is the issue of NPM dependency expression. Once I get 5 out, I will write up the RFC that we've wanted to do. But I don't know if folks have been hearing about people wanting to do this or any of that. But that's kind of the like outstanding question there. Otherwise, not too many updates.
Okay. Is Sven here today?
No, it does not look like it.
Sven is not here, but he has updated in the issue that he could not make that, what is that? WASMPack bundler plugin. He was pushing that from his work now. So he cannot do that stuff. It is in that meeting 12 issue. So it's kind of delayed. And again, there was like major rescoping or scoping has been done on Rust on the Webpack side for the budgeting for the Webpack and WASM stuffs. And hopefully we are not affected by the WASM stuff. That's what Sven has updated there. So that's basically it.
Cool. Thanks for the update. Docs?
From just what I've read this week and what we talked about, it looks like we're still kind of behind, but I think if we make a push within the next week, I think we can get back on track and probably be ready by RustConf.
Website. Do you have anything else you want to talk about the website, Sendil?
No, that's pretty much of it. And if you guys have any other ideas, just let me know. That's it.
There's one kind of outstanding thing I think with the website, and I know that in your original sketch, Fitzjen, you had a code snippet. The current iteration of the website doesn't have one, but if we want one, we should probably start thinking about that now and like what exactly it looks like and you know all of that shenanigans. So I don't think it's necessary. Like a fair number of the pages from the domain working groups don't have a snippet. Like I think networking might have one, but they're kind of super behind. Embedded doesn't have one, and in fact the embedded page is pretty up to date, so I can share it as an example. But yeah, if we wanted some sort of code something, that's a thing to keep in mind. So I'm not sure if that's a good idea at this point.
Okay, so whether or not it's a good point or a good idea, I don't know. I thought having the example would be good, but again, if the target audience is like CTOs, then like maybe the code snippet makes less sense. If the target audience is like developers who are interested in doing cool stuff, then I think it does make sense. But like if we do want a code snippet, then I think WebAssembly Studio is the way to go. It has the kind of embeddable version that you can put in an iframe, and
that's not supposed to be officially supported.
Yeah, but
Mozilla
like
just did that for the Arch. They do not say that embedding it long term is supposed to be. I mean, it's cool. I'm just telling like the people they told me that you're not supposed to do that.
Well, okay. I talked to Till also, and like it seemed clear that like if it worked now, then it will continue to work because no one's really touching WebAssembly Studio. And
yeah, I mean that is true. So
at a later date.
I have an opinion here. That's instead of embedding this WebAssembly Studio inside the browser that we have, rather than the main primary button which you saw in that website just goes there. So it just goes to WebAssembly Studio. So probably we can do something like that. If the CTOs are really interested to go there and check it out, they can check it out from there. The other idea that I also had was like we can have this tab editor with 3 tabs. The first one is like the Rust code, and then the converted vast, and then the other final version is like how does it run, or in JavaScript how do you call it. So all this in the 3 tabs. But that again, kind of like if you're going for more complex examples, your vast code is huge, so you cannot put that inside, so which also doesn't make any sense. So that's the main reason why I removed the tab editor and the editor which we were talking about. But yeah, that's the basic reason why I removed it.
Yeah, Sandil, it is worth saying that the current iteration of the site, the primary call to action is to like click WebAssembly Studio. So there is that. But yeah, that's probably something to think about and discuss.
Yeah, like what do we even want our call to action to be?
There's also a sense that like the website, especially because it's primarily a marketing site, it's going to be mobile friendly. And so embedding a text editor in a site in like a small panel that then is going to become even smaller on a phone just might not make sense at all, because it might not be even functional. So like I have no idea what WebAssembly Studio looks like on a phone, but my guess is not great.
Yeah, just also an accessibility with screen readers kind of thing, like probably will not look good or sound good at least.
Anyways, stuff to think about, but I figured I'd bring it up.
Yeah. All right, debugging, no updates. Testing, no template. Let's see, so there's the WASM pack template, and then there's our Rust WASM template. We haven't integrated these two yet.
So for what it's worth, like, so I created the WASM pack template because I needed something to test cargo generate with, and I wanted something like really simple. I'm still a little confused about exactly what the current state of the template is trying to accomplish, because it does feel like it has both library stuff and like put it in your HTML stuff. And I don't want to go in and like clear out a whole bunch of stuff that I don't think makes any sense if there's like not consensus or if I'm stepping on toes there. So I'm kind of building the WASM pack template from like little like bare minimum stuff. I am the only reason that I am not combining them is because I don't want to delete stuff that I maybe don't think is necessary, but like other people do, or I don't know. I believe the last time we chatted, like Sven agreed that there should be a cargo generate template for the library, and then we should make an NPM template for the website. So
does NPM have its own templating thing?
It does. It just landed it, inspired by Create React app.
Okay. So yeah, so I think like whether it's split the Rust WASM template into just more of like a library template and integrating with the WASM pack template, or turning the Rust WASM template into an NPM template, like it seems to me like we need one that's like the library, and then one that's like using the library and like creating the web page, right?
Yeah.
And then we want to integrate both of those back into the book.
Yeah, so I would say I think that we would want to take the one that we currently have and make that the NPM template. And then the WASM pack template, at least as far as I could tell for like the moment, like doesn't actually require all that much. It just like has to have WASM bindgen as a dep and C dilib in the cargo toml, and then you're pretty
The one thing that I think is really nice about the Rust WASM template is that you pretty much get CI set up for you just when you clone it. And it would be great to get that into the WASM pack template too.
Yeah, I think I have an outstanding issue for that anyways in there.
Yeah, I feel like we have very similar visions for like the final template situation in the story, but like it's not clear what the incremental steps from where we are now to get there are. So
So the
I don't
first
know,
thing
maybe
I
we
can
should,
do is I'm happy to take the WasmPack template that I have that's currently under my personal GitHub and put it in the org.
okay, yeah,
If what we think is that should be the one that turns into the like library template, and then we turn the other one into like the website npm template.
yeah, that
I mostly
sounds
just
right.
don't want to like step on people's toes.
Yeah, I'd be interested in maybe setting up like a small meeting for just like going through and agreeing on what our incremental steps are, for anyone who is interested in the templating story. So, okay, I'm gonna write up a little thing. Add your name here if you're interested in this. And then I'll send an invite and we can figure out a doodle and everything.
By this, you mean the paper doc you're in right now?
Sorry, yeah, in the agenda, just throw your name
I'll
down
find
if
it.
you want to be invited. Okay, and then so we had marked testing grayed out and we kind of marked it out of scope for 2018, but I think Alex has some stuff to talk about.
Just
as
a
far as that
little,
goes.
right? Just a small thing.
I mean, we're also running pretty low on time, and so I don't mind talking more about this later. Do you, if you have other stuff you want to get to?
We don't have any other agenda items, so.
Ah,
all
perfect.
you.
All right. So I have been bemoaning the current state of testing in the WASM bindgen repository itself, and where every single test creates a new cargo project and runs cargo test or cargo build and WASM bindgen and all that, and it's super slow because they're running so many compilers. So the idea is I wanted to make that much nicer for WASM bindgen itself, and it has morphed into what I'm hoping is kind of what might become an eventual nice testing framework for just WASM and Rust code in general, where the idea is that currently when you write tests in Rust today, you just kind of write some integration tests. You have like, throw a file in test/foo.rs, and then you put some pound test annotations. You might sprinkle that in your normal code as well. But then the idea is, so we'll take that, and instead of writing pound test, you write pound WASM bindgen test, and that's it. Other than that, cargo test -- target WASM32 will just work. That'll run tests in either node. It'll run it in a browser where you can like actually load it up and go hit the web page and debug stuff, or it'll run it in a headless browser where it'll just print out everything that happens in a headless mode and suitable for CI, but actually running tests like in Firefox or Chrome on CI, on Travis, or on FA or whatever. So currently this is all implemented and actually sent as a pull request to the WASM bindgen repository. It's not a super usable state right now. It's still kind of like wonky and you have to install a couple things and do a bit of configuration. So it's not recommended for general purpose use, but if you're curious or interested in testing in WASM, I would love to kind of get some more feedback on this, especially on kind of the general design idea of what's going on here. And so currently this is primarily just for the WASM bindgen repo, just to kind of help us write our tests and make it so we can have effectively idiomatic tests that you would expect in Rust code would also be written the same for WASM, Rust code, and all that good stuff. But that's kind of expanding over time as is. But yeah, that's kind of like the current status of that. And like eventually we want to see this maybe integrated into a WASMPack test command. And that's kind of like, we still want to figure out some more of the design of how this actually works internally and make sure more people understand it than just me. And so I suspect it's going to be tweaked a little bit over time to actually get into WASMPack. But that's kind of the eventual end goal is at one point in the future, you just type WASMPack test and it'll just run all these tests as cargo test does today for your normal binary tests.
Super awesome.
I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be really great.
Yeah. All right. So that's everything for the 2018 goals. Does anyone have anything else that they did not add to the agenda that they'd like to talk about?
Oh, I have a small task that might be awesome because I just have way too much going on that someone else should pick up. So, I don't know, recently, Nick and I met with folks from the Parcel team. And so ostensibly the way WASMPack currently works, it should work out the box with Parcel, and that's what they told me. So it would be really awesome if in just the Hello World tutorial for WASMPack, we have a chapter on Webpack, and then if we added a chapter on Parcel, I'd like to see that actually work. And then just make sure that that's good so that we have time, if it doesn't work, to give feedback to the team to be like, hey, we tried to do this and it didn't work out so great, so let's do this. And to be clear, that's using the WASM-Pack workflow that then dumps into Parcel. Parcel did just release like you can import a .rs file and they take care of compilation and shenanigans for you. They, in the meeting, expressed some reasons why they felt some people would still want that, and that's fine. I kind of think long-term that people probably won't want that. You don't want to have to like implement every source language's compiler into your bundler. That's going to be a huge pain in the butt. But for now, like, that's fine. But if somebody wants to try and tackle basically reproducing the section of like integrating your new WASM package, but do it in Parcel instead of Webpack, that would be awesome. Very appreciated. Otherwise, I'll just do it someday.
Is there anyone who wants to step up and take that?
Jamie did send me a example repo to help whoever might want to do that. So potentially a lot of the work is already done. The pros is probably all that needs to happen. I don't know.
Cool. So maybe just file an issue with a good first issue tag or whatever, and it'll populate. All right. Anyone else have anything to bring up to the group?
This is a very kind of sketchy idea, but currently on the Rust core team, we're talking about marketing the edition. And obviously the domain working groups are a huge part of what we're excited about with the edition. And so we have started talking about trying to get people to give some edition specific talks around the time that things are going to get released, or to write blog posts. And so blog posts probably don't need as much time like ahead of, but like if you're trying to like get your talk in at like a local meetup or something, just keep in mind that we're like looking to help support people in doing that, to help advertise the 2018 edition. So if you want to do that, like, do it. Two, if you want help, feel free to ping me, and I can talk to you a little bit more about the kind of stuff that you might want. And I know we're going to have some like out of the box artifacts for folks. But as much as this can like help advertise the WebAssembly stuff, the better, in my opinion. So, also, if anyone has a design for a Rust WASM billboard, just kidding.
I know. I guess one last thing I just remembered now. I know we did a couple of different posts for the different parts that we wanted people to help out with in WebAssembly. Did we do one for the book yet? Like I know we did one for, like, profiling or something like that. Kind of like what our vision was.
Yeah, I owe you one of those.
Like
I
our
just
vision
forgot.
for WASM.
Yeah, did we do one for the book yet?
No, we have not
Okay.
done WASM-Pack or the book.
Then I will do one for the book.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's the point. I just wanted to make sure before I like started writing that, and then we were like, oh, we already did that.
Yeah.
I had like 300 bajillion notifications coming back, and so I just declared bankruptcy. Didn't want to make sure I lost that. All right, that's my last question. I'm good.
Cool. All right. That's an hour, so let's call it there. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Bye-bye.